Yeah.
And this really points to the epic levels of corruption that we're already seeing.
Yeah.
So now, have past American governments involved some degree of collusion between major economic players and the government through, lobbyists, et cetera? Well, of course. But what we're seeing now is really on a totally different order of magnitude. I mean, the president himself is directly trading on the power of the office through meme coins. And he's cashing in on a social media company whose only value is really tied to his office. So, think about Musk himself.
Whose board members include Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, his AG and his FBI head.
Yeah.
I know.
The corruption is off the charts. It just is. And to a degree that journalists don't really know how to cover it and talk about it. And media folks don't know how to talk about it. It's just Americans don't even know how to think about it, because it's not that we haven't had corrupt politicians. It's not that. This is corruption taking over our institutions. Our sense of government now is just a mafia state, and it's very difficult for folks to grasp what that means and what kind of impact it's going to have on them. But they're starting to feel it now, and they're starting to see it now. And hopefully we can keep putting, thank God for you and the work that you do. And we're so grateful to you. So that work, this work.
I mean, I really do. I think there's an opportunity. I think that, listen, you have to sort of take hope where you find it. But I think that, the crashing of the economy is going to really alarm those sort of very serious people who sort of rationalized their support for Trump because they thought he was going to be good for the economy. I mean, it's really sad, but if they see their own fortunes dwindling, I mean, that might hopefully do something. I also think that this is not what, most Americans want to live in, a society with democratic ideals rather than government that's
we have to catch them up real quick. We have to catch them up real quick on who they're actually dealing with, because they've been sold a bag of goods, and get them into action really, really quick. So there is sort of catching up and running, and here's what now we need to do. Here are the actions and the things that we need to do. And I wanted to ask you about that. I had a little thing I wanted to ask you about with the Promise Keepers in terms of radicalization of men, and how I feel like there's a tripling down on radicalizing young men into this sort of white Christian nationalist movement, and groups that hadn't typically been white Christian nationalists before, but were evangelical in their movement and were based around men, have now turned in and morphed into this thing, this machine of radicalizing these men. So I just think it's important to know that's going on. I'd love to hear your thoughts about all that. But in the face of that happening, because never underestimate the bad guy, right? They're gonna keep tripling down and keep building their forces. What are some of the things to do?
There's so much. I mean,
battle this white nationalist movement.
Well, if I may, first of all, there's no substitute for the power of the vote. We have to remember that the country did not go MAGA. Trump, if you look at percentages by which presidents win elections, Trump won by a relatively small margin. He won by a smaller margin in 2024 than Biden won in 2020. What happened was that there was, and if you look at the number of eligible voters, he won about the same, percentage of voters as the last, as he did the first time. But what happened was that there was reduced enthusiasm for voting on the Democratic side. And, we don't have time to get into all the reasons for that, but there is no substitute for turning out the vote. The movement, much of the Christian nationalist movement, functions as a voter turnout machine. And they know if you can, in a country where 40 to 50% of people don't bother to vote, and an additional number have their vote sort of downgraded through, some of the dirty tricks, like, saying you're not allowed to bring water to people. And
you can write $1 million checks, but don't bring a glass of water.
Bring an older person water. but you don't need a majority of the population to win elections. You just need a disproportionately motivated minority. So they're very carefully focused on swinging the right districts and the right states to win elections. And they do that often through faith-based organizations, through churches. There's, they've done it in Florida, and they've really moved populations. If we look between 2016 and 2020, the Latino vote overall shifted 8 to 10 points in favor of Trump. It shifted even further between 2020 and 2024, and a lot of that happened through the targeting of Latino churches, particularly in the sort of independent, charismatic vein. That sort of sector of the country is actually very diverse itself in terms of politics, but it's a large part of it is given over to very hard right politics, and it's bringing new energy to the movement. So turning out the base and also going after low propensity voters is super important. I mean, there's all this sort of talk about, oh, how do we persuade Trump voters? Well, I think you could spend like a decade or more trying to really change the mind of a person who's all down the rabbit hole and not seeing reality, and you wouldn't get anywhere. You might actually your energy might be better spent holding people accountable to vote, volunteering to babysit that lady who's got young kids and can't get away to vote, or driving somebody who might be disabled or a little older to the polls to help them vote, or holding your friends accountable. And also going after people who say their vote doesn't matter and persuading them that it really does. And they have to vote, not just in presidential elections, but in every election cycle. And they need to vote all the way up and down the ballot. Second of all, everybody can get involved in local politics. If you leave it to other people to do school board stuff, guess who shows up? Moms for Liberty. And you guys know who Moms for Liberty is.
Yes, we all know.
Show up and raise hell and claim that, the public school libraries are stuffed with pornography, which they're not. And so it's really important to really be on top of what's happening in your school board, in your town governance, and in all the sort of, close in your community. Another thing that's really important is we have to stop purity testing one another. Yeah. There's a kind of, on the right, it's a very authoritarian movement. And they say there's no victory without unity, and everybody sort of gets in line. They don't mind buying into a lie or promoting lies, and everybody gets in line. On the sort of moderate liberal left, and now it includes some of the sort of never Trump Republicans in this coalition, it's a big noisy group. We're not all going to get everything we want. And frankly, we shouldn't get everything we want. It's like a big family. This one wants a pony. This one wants to go to France. You're not going to get it. But if you can agree on more than you disagree on, you can work together. If you can agree on some core democratic principles and understand the nature of what you're up against, then you should really be able to work with others and, set aside, say, some of your policy preferences, perhaps in service of a greater coalition. So those are like three things. Oh, and I would say, another thing we really need to do is support pro-democracy organizations. There are a lot of them out there. Everybody's got different interests and skill sets. So do a little bit of research and find an organization that's doing something that you support, and volunteer or give them your, support in other ways. So, and again, remember, there are things we can do as individuals, but there are things we can do better when we join together with others.